Dialogue Weekend. China fights to contain the virus and takes action to stimulate the economy. And a political earthquake in Germany.
Genommen sage allerdings auch, dass ich sie bedauere. Ich kann mir vorstellen, dass das Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer nicht einfach gefallen ist.
With her successor stepping down, who will follow Angela Merkel? Now on Dialogue Weekend.
Welcome to this edition of Dialogue Weekend. I'm Xu Jinduo. To start today, I'm joined by Ian Begg, Professional Research Fellow at the European Institute of the London School of Economics and Political Science, and Dr. William Li, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute from Washington. Welcome to both of you. Well, beyond Hubei province, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, the number of confirmed cases in the rest of the country has been on the decline for 11 consecutive days. Well, it's encouraging news. No one is certain that the trend will take hold. Factories are partially up and running. Some stores are open, but others remain closed. We'll take a look at the economic impact of the coronavirus. Based on the development so far, so Ian, what's the economic impact you see for China as well as for the rest of the world?
Well, for China, the obvious impact is going to be a slowing down of GDP growth, depending on the impact of the restrictions that have had to be imposed to contain the virus. We don't yet know whether that's going to mean lower growth, zero growth, or even a recession. If what you're saying about the new infections is accurate, then it would suggest that it is being contained and the friction in the system will be limited. But if there's a new outbreak or a new vector somewhere else, then new restrictions have to be imposed. It's the friction in the system that's going to be the source of a slowing down of the economy. For the global economy, it matters as well, because China is such an important supplier of many parts for other industries. Supply chains will suffer, and that will be the same sort of effect as having a tariff, effectively, because it puts a blockage between the supplier and the user of the components and of the final products. So in both counts, you'd expect to see the tendency towards slowing down, depending on how serious the outbreak becomes.
Well, that's right. William, you know, like at the same time, of course, because of the outbreak, and, you know, there's consecutive days of actually very slow growth of the confirmed cases. But the problem is, like, as more and more people are coming back from their home to the cities, then there's the danger of you know, increased cases or increased contagion, for example. So what do you think about that impact, the potential risk for Chinese economy?
You really hit the main policy issue right on the head, right, with that question, because the world is dealing with two views of the virus. One is that the financial markets view, which is that it's really nothing more than a bad cold, and that it'll come back, the activity will come back as soon as the weather warms up and people start to be reassured that the risk of contagion goes down. The other view by epidemiologists and a lot of medical experts is that we don't know enough about this virus to know how the profile will proceed. We don't know if things will get worse, and we are really having to have accurate data is the most important thing about secondary contagion. And that high risk, that high risk of a disaster of the sort that we saw in 1918 that killed more people than the World War I itself, those two scenarios are really where the policymakers are having to make a decision. Do we put fiscal stimulus in and try to revive the economy quickly, or do we deal with logistics and supply side constraints that could get worse if people are not confident enough to come back out and resume the production that Ian just mentioned, and to resume China's role as a major nexus of supply chain and trade?
Well, that's right. Since you are based in D.C., William, because this week actually was the start of the implementation of the first phase agreement between China and the United States. Given the grave situation, I mean, remaining little changed actually in China, and also you see the spread in the rest of the world actually of the virus. So any expectation of the enforcement of the agreement?
I think everyone is trying to understand the situation in China right now. So I think the implementation of phase one and how the profile expenditures will be expected to proceed is really anyone's guess. And I think on both sides, we're trying to understand what the profile will be in China. If China remains locked up, if the logistics in China are such that it cannot resume even normal demand and normal supply conditions, then there's almost no way that exports from the U.S. can come to China. There's a good story of how poultry that was designated to go to China is being diverted because the ports have no people to unload the ships. And under those circumstances, no one expects the expenditures that are agreed upon for phase one to be implemented on the same timetable as they expected before. But don't forget, the timetable is a 2-year timetable. So there's a lot of slack that we can use to try to move the expenditures around, the timing around, to get the phase one agreement in place as originally agreed upon.
Well, with that, there's more or less assurance, but if you look at, of course, the overall economy here in China, for example, the provincial governments are basically urging the business to resume operation as much as possible. But on the ground, the lower officials are more or less dragging their feet for fear of the increase of, like small outbreaks in the certain regions, certain city, or certain corner of the society. So, Ian, how can you balance the need? On one hand, you need to contain the spread of the virus. On the other hand, you do need, the resumption of the business operations.
Well, you do, but I would say that the officials at lower level are probably more correct in this, because if you allow the possibility that the virus takes off again, then you do more damage by acting too early to re-stimulate economic activity than you would by waiting to see if it's properly contained. I'm not an epidemiologist or a biologist, I'm an economist, but I would say we should look at this through the economic lens of risk. There's a trade-off between acting too soon and creating higher risk and acting too late and causing a recession. I would say err on the side of caution at this point.
Well, William, you mentioned about probably the challenges for even stimulus packages right now. But anyway, the Chinese central bank has already pumped up more liquidity into the market. That raises the expectation for more even rate cut or more emergency measures to respond in response to this outbreak. So, short term or long term, how will that work?
One of the challenges that the financial policymakers are facing is that, one, they need to pump liquidity to keep asset prices up, because of a sharp drop in the Chinese stock market will have global effects, because a lot of the stocks are linked globally. But I think the other issue is forbearance. The small businesses that need credit, that are not able to pay off their loans, they need to have forbearance on the part of the regulators to say that we understand your businesses are shut down, and so you don't need to pay your loans on time, and we will supply you subsidies to make up the difference. Those are the issues I think that are much more important for domestically for China and also globally, because we need to be able to keep the businesses alive so that when supply conditions do free up and the fear of doing business goes away, the businesses are still there to come back. But the pumping of liquidity into markets is to maintain asset prices. And so far, China has been more or less effective in maintaining their asset prices. But the fear of having China come back online again on the supply side is what's holding back globally the markets from proceeding as they were before. And a lot of uncertainty and volatility has entered into global asset markets because of this kind of uncertainty about the course of the virus in China.
Well, as you said, I think there's a recently a survey by Tsinghua University and Peking University, a survey about SMEs, small and medium-sized businesses here in China. They say like more than 67% of them actually, they say they only have a reserve of like 2 months. So Yuan, do you see there's a difference basically between the big companies and smaller companies at this time of challenging?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And what William said, I agree with. You need to find ways of ensuring that companies which are obliged to pause so as to deal with the threat of the virus to survive that pause. it's a bit like the economy as a whole being put into a kind of quarantine until you see what's happening with the virus. And if that quarantine can be assisted by liquidity, assisted by helping the banks to ensure that they maintain the cash flow to those companies, or don't insist that they pay loans too early, then yes, it's going to be the way to deal with it. And certainly big companies are going to be far more able to do this because they can tap into longer term loans than smaller companies, which are often on the margins of financial viability.
Well, thank you, William, for your getting up so early in the morning and your time, your insights. Well, coming up next, we will talk about Germany. German politics, and Gret Kramp-Karrenbauer, also known as AKK, has resigned as leader of Germany's largest party, the Christian Democratic Union, or CDU. As the successor of Chancellor Angela Merkel, her quitting has thrown the country's politics into disarray as the party searches for a new leader and the nation faces an increasingly polarized political landscape. Joining me from Berlin also is Paul Hockenhuis, a journalist and author based in Germany. Welcome to our show. Paul, I'll start with you. Why did the CDU members, obviously, I mean, the lightning rod for the resignation of AKK is the alleged cooperation of CDU together with the AfD members for a state election in eastern part of the country. And why did the CDU members violate the party rule to do that in the first place?
Yeah, well, that's a very complex story. Thuringia, one of the southeastern states in Germany, indeed was very fragmented. There was a very strong vote for the far right, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany. And all of the mainstream parties said that they would not form a coalition with the AfD. As it turned out, it looked like there was going to be a coalition-left government. That, at the very last moment, fell through. And indeed, Merkel's Christian Democrats were left with the option of coming to power in this small state with the help of, although not necessarily together with, the AfD, the far right. And they went for it, which was against the rule of Merkel. It was against what Anna Kramp-Karrenbauer had said and wanted, and they violated the party's very strict doctrine that there would not be a coalition in any form with the far right. So this precipitated AKK's fall, but it wasn't the only reason for it. And she had been, last year, Angela Merkel stepped down from the leadership of the party, the Christian Democrats, and there was a vote, and her favored person, Kramp-Karrenbauer, won the vote. And she's a liberal, she's centrist, she's a woman, all like Merkel, and it looked as if things would proceed smoothly. The next elections are 2021, and that she would lead the party instead of Merkel. But now everything's different. Now everything's up in the air. The post-Merkel era has already begun, and the first episode for the CDU has really been a big flop.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you see there's a split, let's say, from the national level CDU and also the regional CDU operation? For example, I mean, if there's a cooperation with AfD, the far right, I mean, was that the top leadership aware of that, or they are not?
Well, I think they were, and Thuringia is a special situation. There's a particularly strong and a particularly conservative far right, some people even say neo-fascist, AfD there. And so they were aware of it, but it should have been able to be controlled by the leadership, by Kramp-Karrenbauer, and she just simply didn't get the job done. It all happened while Merkel was abroad. The split, though, it's not really between East and West or North and South. The CDU is a really large party. It's a big tent party, and it's always appealed to a lot of different people. It's been a spectrum of opinion in it for as long as it has existed. And Merkel brought the party, she revolutionized the party and German Christian democracy as such, bringing it into a much more mainstream. She modernized it. She shifted left, very close to the Social Democrats. what she did was that she took the party which came out of the Helmut Kohl era, more conservative and more traditionalist than most of its voters, and she moved it in the direction of its voters and took a more centrist positions on social issues, economic issues, cultural issues. She pushed forward the exit from nuclear power and the adoption of renewable energy and things like this. So it moved the party to the left. There were people party in the more right side, more nationalist, more traditional, more Christian, more free market, who weren't happy with it. So now you indeed have a party that has two very obvious wings. One more liberal, left-wing, centrist, represented by Merkel and Kramp-Karrenbauer and many others, and another which is more right-wing and that claims that the whole problem is that the AfD wouldn't be there even if the CDU had maintained a much stronger position on their right-wing flank. And so that's what they want to do. They want to win back AfD voters by being more conservative themselves.
Well, Ian, AfD is considered as from the far right and also mostly from eastern part of Germany, the former socialist Germany over there. So how far right are they? And also, there's yes, there are criticism for Merkel for being somehow revolutionized the party to become a left party. But look, some of the issues like child care, like social affairs, there's a consensus basically whether you are on the left, on the right. For example, gay issue, for example, climate change. People do have a consensus over there, right?
Well, yes and no, because the AfD over the years has evolved from being initially just an anti-euro, the currency party, to one which has become much more Eurosceptical, much more right-wing. Many of its founders have left to be overtaken by far more right-wing, hard-right people than in the past. And it's not true to say it's only in East Germany, because there are pockets of strength of the AfD across the country. It's a real threat to the integrity of the centre-right represented by Merkel's party. What I think is going to happen next is that the party as a whole, the CDU party, will have to reaffirm the position it's taken throughout, which is that it is not going to collaborate with the AfD. And that's going to force the CDU instead to think of where it collaborates elsewhere. In particular, the likely trend is that the CDU will try to form a coalition with the Greens following the next elections next autumn, the autumn of 2021. And that's going to be a sea change in German politics. It's already occurring to some extent in certain regions, like in the southwest of Germany, where the Mercedes cars are built. And if that succeeds, it will again diminish the other centrist party, the SPD, the centre-left party, which is plummeting in the polls at the moment.
Well, Ian, I understand that you just had dinner with, last month actually, with AKK in London. So what's your impression of her? Is her the qualified leader for the party, if not for the country?
Well, she was on a visit to London in her capacity as Defence Minister and asked us at the London School of Economics to arrange a public talk. And she was pretty good in the public talk, especially taking questions and doing the questions and answer session with students and other guests. But she did not come over to me as somebody who really has that last ounce of charisma that you need to be a very top leader. I've met very few top leaders, but she didn't quite have it, and this maybe reflects her background as the former minister-president of one of the smallest German states, the Saarland, which is on the French border, and her experience as being party leader really didn't go that well over the last year, which I think Paul has already referred to. These are the things that say she isn't quite of the calibre that's going to be needed to be the successor to Merkel as Chancellor, which is the real job, not party leader.
Well, Paul, with AKK is gone now, so next, I mean, a lot of people are raising their hands probably to become the successor of Merkel. So who will fill Merkel's shoes when she steps down in 2021?
Well, before I answer that directly, let me say that I agree with what Ian said on just about everything, but I don't think it was solely her personal qualities or her leadership qualities that were the reason for her fall. I mean, I don't think that she had a vision for something new for the party. And I think this is the same thing with all the other people right now. I think this is the problem with the CDU in general, that none of the people who are in possibilities now to fill her shoes have a vision that more than, you know, going a little bit more to the left or more than a little bit to the right. I think that given the huge and very different problems that Germany and Europe and the world is facing right now, that somebody's got to come up with a new vision. I mean, I think, for example, in France of Macron's En Marche, forward, not right or left. But I think that there's even a better example, and that is if you look to Brussels. The new president of the European Commission is Ursula von der Leyen. She is a German Christian Democrat. She had just been defense minister. It was her position that AKK filled when von der Leyen went to Brussels to become president of the Commission. And she has called out a European Green Deal. A climate package that wouldn't be just one program, but would influence all of the different European policies and programs and direction, so that everything that the European Union does would have an impact on moderating or mitigating, curbing climate change. And this is an incredible new vision. And this is the kind of thing I think that a German leader, be it a Christian Democrat or another, has to do. And it is exactly what the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats have not done. And this is the reason why, as Ian pointed out, that the German Greens are right on the heels right now of the Christian Democrats. And unless they come up with a convincing leader who has a vision for the future, rather than just tweaking the present program a little bit one way or another, they're going to be in real trouble. And it's very possible that a Green would become the strongest party and thus Chancellor of Germany. In fact, that the Christian Democrats might be the junior coalition partner in a national coalition, just as they are in southwest Germany and in Baden-Württemberg.
Well, uncertainty in the Germans' politics and also the future of the country. Many thanks to Ian Beck from London School of Economics and Political Science, and Paul Hakenos, journalist and author based in Germany. Well, let's leave it there for now and take a look at this week's Newsmaker.
Pang Junho.
첫 번째 상을 받게 돼서
실제로 벌어지니까 일단 너무 기쁘고
자들이 원래 참 잘쏘가 사모님이 뭐랄까
풀타임으로 수업 어떻게 하시는지. Is it okay with you?
Well, to gain a better understanding of the Korean film industry and also the movie itself, of course, we now have Molly H. Kim, a film critic and professor from the Department of the Theater and the Film at the University of Suwon in South Korea. Welcome to our show, Professor. So what are the reactions to Parasite, the Oscar wins?
Thank you for having me. Could you say that again?
Yeah, I mean the reaction inside your country of the award from Oscar.
Oh, of course the reaction is huge. Everyone was very surprised, but at some other people, they already predicted this was going to happen because you know, Parasite has been phenomenal in U.S. for last 8-9 months. So some professionals and film critics sort of predicted, you know, more than 2 or 3 awards Parasite will win. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we're all happy, of course.
This is to a certain degree, it's predictable. It's expected to win. But you know, what has made it so appealing, not only to the Korean audience, but also to the global audience? For example, it is very popular in the U.S. You know, some commentary said that the story takes place in South Korea, but it could easily unfold in Los Angeles or London. Is that the real Korea?
Bong Joon-ho numerously said this film was relatable for everyone because it talks about haves and have-nots and, you know, lower class struggle, which is pretty universal theme. But I think there's a lot more to it because there's so many movies talking about class issues so far. But not many films became so, you know, successful as much as Parasite is. And many film critics, especially in US, they talked about this part of humor that Parasite has, even though the movie has big tragedy at the end, but then the driving force, especially into the mid part of the film, it's humor and dark humor that people never really expected.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, it's a story about the poor people in Korea. Paraphrase my question again. So is that the real Korea or the real description of the life of the poor people?
It could be. I mean, it's a drama, so you have to think about it. It's dramatized, but especially the spaces that Bong Joon-ho built for this this film, Parasite, is pretty realistic, though. I was told that he actually built this this house for the poor family, but then it's pretty much what we see when you go to a poor area in you know, some part of Seoul.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, South Korea TVs, dramas and films and have been very popular in Asia for some time, and also now they are basically being accepted around the world. How did South Korea establish such a wide global cultural reach? What's your secret?
I mean, I don't work for music industry and television industry, so I can't tell you any secrets. But if I can talk about film industry, even though we're all happy about, you know, what Parasite has achieved, but then it's not actually all of a sudden. Many movies, especially maybe about 5-6 years, they've been selling out, especially like you said in East Asian region. So it was going up, but then, you know, this glory that's from the academy, it's something that we never really totally expected.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, South Korean, the industry, not only the film industry, as I mentioned, you have the Korean band, for example, BTS, the first since Beatles to release 3 Billboard #1 albums in a single year. The drama program is already highly popular in Asia and also other parts of the world. So how do you compare this film industry or the entertainment industry in Korea and that in other Asian countries, for example, Japan?
Even though I mean, BTS is still huge, but I think film industry was the first field that sort of became globalized, especially in terms of their market. And it already happened in the beginning of 2000, but then Psy became so successful in the middle of, you know, 2000, and then BTS and Korean drama. So I think it was pretty gradual. And then maybe there's sort of share this marketing strategy each other, because even though the quality of all these contents is pretty important, but I think same with the success of Parasite, this marketing strategy and planning was so vital. And then I understand that they shared all these strategies and planning for their business.
Well, the president, congratulating the team, promised that the government will stand with those in the industry so that they can stretch their imagination to the fullest and make movies free from worries. So what's the next step of Korean film?
I think, I mean, definitely there's going to be bigger market for Korean cinema, especially in US and, you know, globally, because there's so many audiences who saw their first Korean film with Parasite.
Sorry.
So this means basically
unfortunately, the time is running up.
Cinema.
With that, we are coming to the end of today's show. You can watch us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. You can find me on Twitter, Xu Qinduo. Thank you for watching. See you next week.